Hello, gorgeous, and welcome to the Midlife Realignment. I'm your host, Esther Blum, and I'm here to disrupt the narrative on perimenopause and menopause with humor, nutrition, hormones, and fierce self-advocacy. Together, we'll rewrite your story and the rules because there's a light at the end of the vaginal tunnel. Let's go. Hello, gorgeous. Welcome back to the Midlife Realignment. I'm your host, Esther Blum, TEDx and keynote speaker, functional medicine dietitian, author of See You Later, Ovulator, and your personal guide to making menopause your bitch. If you are new here, welcome. I am so glad you found us. This is the podcast where we do not sugarcoat, we do not gaslight, and we do not hand you a pamphlet about hot flashes and call it menocare. We go deep, we go real, and we leave you knowing more about your body than your OBGYN might, which, depending on who your OBGYN is, may or may not be a high bar. But I digress. Today's episode is one I have been getting asked to do for months. And the reason I kept waiting is because the research landscape on GLP-1s is moving so fast that what was true 6 months ago is already being revised, updated, and dramatically expanded. I wanted to have enough data to give you something substantial and genuinely exciting, and now I do. So we're going to talk about GLP-1s today, and let's start talking about GLP-1s and HRT. These are really some of the most talked about areas in women's health right now, and also this comes up a lot in my practice with my private clients, and they are being almost entirely discussed in separate silos, one by the obesity medicine world, one by the menopause medicine world, and very few people are standing in the middle saying these two belong together, and the data is proving it. And that's where I live. So let's go on this. All right. What even is a GLP-1? Let's start at the beginning because I know some of you are nodding along with this and some of you are like, I know it's the Ozempic thing, but I couldn't tell you what it actually does. GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1, and it is a hormone your body naturally produces, and it produces it primarily in your gut in response to eating. When GLP-1s are released, a few things happen. So first, your pancreas gets the signal to release insulin, and your liver gets the signal to stop dumping glucagon. So your stomach slows down how fast it empties, and your brain gets a signal that says, hey, we're good, put down the fork now. So GLP-1 is essentially your body's own natural appetite regulating, blood sugar managing messenger. It's brilliant, actually. GLP-1 receptor agonists, drugs like semaglutide, that's Ozempic and Wegovy, or trizepatide, which is Mounjaro and Zepbound, and liraglutide, which is Victoza and Saxenda. And really, who is naming these products, by the way? These are synthetic versions that mimic and amplify that signal. They bind to your GLP-1 receptors throughout your body and essentially turn up the volume on everything I just described. So when you take them, you're going to feel full faster. You're going to stay fuller longer because it delays that gastric emptying. And the cool part is, by the way, just a sidebar for a second, we're going to see some really fascinating work in this field with eating disorders, but also with opiate addiction and drug addiction. There's going to be some really cool applications coming with GLP-1s. But back to what I was saying. So your food noise decreases dramatically, your blood sugar stabilizes, and for most people, of course, you end up cutting calories or eating significantly less. But I also love the anti-inflammatory benefits that we get from GLP-1s. But if you're someone who has spent, decades of your life in a war with food and your appetite and your body weight, and especially if you have insulin resistance or metabolic syndrome or a history of PCOS or significant perimenopausal weight gain, this can feel genuinely life-changing. And I want to be really clear. Do I tell every single person in my practice to take GLP-1s? I don't. And interestingly enough, a lot of women I suggest it to don't want to take it initially. They want to try every possible route. And I do agree with that you have to have all the starting pieces in place first. But I'll circle back with that. You can't just take a GLP-1 and not change your behaviors and your lifestyle. And I'll come back to that too. So here's the thing about perimenopause and menopause that no one warns us about is it's not just a hormone storm. It's really a metabolic event. And when estrogen drops, our insulin sensitivity decreases. Your cells become less efficient at using glucose for fuel. Your cortisol tends to run higher. Your sleep gets disruptive. And we know that sleep is your metabolic mistress. It directly worsens insulin resistance. If you are not getting sleep for 2 weeks straight, you become dramatically more insulin resistant. Your thyroid can slow down. Your mitochondria get less efficient. And your fat distribution also shifts. So gone is that hourglass shape, right? We tend to pack on visceral fat and become more like a Coke can, or as I joke, SpongeBob. And, we're putting on really pro-inflammatory visceral fat. That's the more dangerous kind because it's closer to our hearts. You're better off having a small waist and junk in the trunk than you are having midsection belly fat. So suddenly, women who manage their weight relatively easily for decades are gaining weight, putting on the menopause, and nothing that we do or used to do is working anymore. I remember my 30s. I would be like, well, I have a Christmas party this Friday, and I would just cut calories for 3 days and lose 5 pounds. That does not work anymore. Cutting calories actually makes it worse because that's going to trigger your cortisol to spike. It's going to cause muscle breakdown. It could slow down your thyroid. And then cardioing yourself to death makes that worse also because, again, often women are already very, very low in cortisol. So they're trying to burn calories with zero gas in the tank. And unfortunately, a lot of physicians who have almost zero training in menopause, which is a whole other episode and my TED Talk, but providers are looking at them and saying, eat less and move more, as if all of you ladies have not been already trying that for 3 years. In fact, most women I see, I actually have to diet up and get them to increase their calories because they're eating so few calories that their metabolism has come to a grinding halt. So enter the GLP-1 prescription. And look, for some women, absolutely it helps to cut calories. Blood sugar is stabilizing, weight comes off, the inflammation markers are improving, the cardio risk factors, your blood pressure, your lipid profiles, those are all improving. But there's a massive gaping hole in this protocol that's not being addressed. I need you to hear me on this because I say it in See You Later, Ovulator, and I will say it again till I'm blue in the face. Muscle is your longevity organ. It's not just for looking great in a tank top or your pair of skinny jeans. It's where glucose gets burned. It's where we grow our mitochondria. It's your primary site of insulin sensitivity. And it produces these anti-inflammatory compounds called myokines. It protects your bone. It literally keeps you alive longer. And study after study shows that muscle mass is one of the strongest predictors of all-cause mortality as we age. That and actually grip strength is another predictor. But GLP-1s, as they're currently being prescribed, are often not prescribed with prescriptive or optimal amounts of protein intake or resistance training protocols or hormone optimization. And that is causing significant muscle loss. So this is where people really need the most education. A lot of people just blindly go. They take shots. I see this in family members where, their arms and legs are super skinny and they've atrophied the muscle they do have, but they still have the big belly because they're not doing strength training and they're not optimizing protein, and they're just losing muscle. So here's what the data shows. In clinical trials, roughly 25 to 40% of the weight lost on GLP medications is lean mass, meaning muscle. You're not just losing fat, you're losing muscle. Now let's unpack this, because in people who are significantly overweight, losing some lean mass alongside fat is somewhat expected, and it can be acceptable if you're managing it properly and still doing all the things to actually support building lean muscle. But in perimenopausal and postmenopausal women who are already fighting that age-related muscle loss, which is known as sarcopenia, that accelerates through perimenopause and menopause, and losing that much muscle is not acceptable. It's a setup for frailty and really metabolic collapse. I had a client, I'll call her Dana. She was 54 years old. She was perimenopausal. She went on trizepatide. She lost 28 pounds in 6 months, and she looked awesome in her clothes, but she came to me because she was super exhausted. She couldn't do a single push-up. Her bone density scan had declined, and her resting metabolic rate had really crashed. And she lost so much muscle that her body was burning fewer calories at rest than it was before she actually started the medication. So she was smaller. She accomplished that, but she was metabolically so much more compromised, and she was what was known as skinny fat. That's the wrong direction, where you look skinny, but you have more fat to muscle than is desirable. So what is the solution? Because it's not don't take the GLP-1, it's don't take the GLP-1 without the full toolkit. GLP-1s should never do the heavy lifting, or that is a really, really poor setup for you. And the most important tool in that kit, the one that is being criminally under-discussed, is hormones. So let's talk about what happens hormonally in the menopausal transition, specifically as it relates to body composition, because I think most people do not understand the mechanisms. Let's start first with estrogen, because we all know by now, anybody who's in perimenopause or menopause knows estrogen does so much more than just handle reproductive benefits. Estrogen receptors are found all over your body. They're in your muscle, they're in your fat, your bone cells, your brain, your heart, your thyroid, everywhere. And estrogen plays a direct role in maintaining muscle protein synthesis. Everyone thinks it's testosterone. No one understands estrogen and progesterone alongside testosterone. So estrogen also helps us with energy production, and it directly impacts insulin sensitivity. So when estrogen declines, all of these functions are compromised. So all that weight gain you're having, your fatigue, your inability to build or maintain muscle alongside blood sugar dysregulation, that is not you failing. That is a predictable physiological consequence of estrogen withdrawal. So this is another reason why estrogen therapy, meaning an estrogen patch or a cream or the Femring, anything that delivers you a consistent source of estrogen, restores many of these functions. And the research shows that estrogen therapy helps preserve lean muscle mass. It supports healthy fat distribution. It improves insulin sensitivity, and it reduces that visceral fat accumulation. This is not controversial in the research literature. It's only controversial in the clinical practice space, where too many providers are still working off that ridiculous, debunked fear narrative from the 2002 Women's Health Initiative study. But we're not doing that today. We know that's a whole nother episode. But hormones are so important in the GLP-1 picture. And the cool thing is that research shows that GLP-1s coupled with HRT have a 15% increase in efficacy when it comes to losing fat. Progesterone is another key player. Bioidentical oral micronized progesterone like Prometrium or a compounded, sustained release formula of progesterone has several body composition and metabolic benefits that get overlooked. So we know progesterone helps with sleep. It helps you fall asleep. I cannot overstate how important sleep is for body composition. As I've stated before, poor sleep raises cortisol, which drives fat storage, especially in the midsection, and it promotes muscle breakdown. So if you're not sleeping, you're not going to recover or build muscle. It's hard to heal and produce enough growth hormone to actually build muscle. And if you're on a GLP-1 while not sleeping and eating 1,200 calories a day, you are losing muscle at an accelerated rate. That is just a given. So these are all the pieces and the dots connecting for you. So I'm going to now talk about the part that really lights me up, which is testosterone in women. Testosterone is the hormone that is the most directly responsible for muscle protein synthesis. And ladies, I cannot tell you enough, if you are rotating your application sites of testosterone on your arms, lower abdomen, inner thighs, behind the knees, and you're on the microdose that you will be on, you will not grow hair on those sites. You will not lose the hair on your head. You will not grow hair on your chin. A little goes a long way. And it only takes a little bit to be an anabolic hormone. We're not trying to get you on the wrestling stage here or in a bodybuilding competition. We're just doing this for protein synthesis and muscle. And testosterone is anabolic, which means it tells your muscles to grow and repair. But testosterone also supports bone density. It drives its energy and motivation, gets your ass off the couch. It helps with libido. It helps with cognition and sharpness. And for women, it begins declining in our late 20s. So by the time we hit perimenopause, many women have already been testosterone deficient for a decade or more. And we know I'm working on advocating this for you ladies, but testosterone for women is still not FDA approved in the United States. It's FDA approved off-label for hyposexual desire disorder. That's it. But if you go to a good functional medicine provider, you can easily get a prescription for compounded, or you can use the men's version. And I talked about this all in my testosterone podcast. But you should probably not go to your regular GP to get testosterone. He or she will probably have no idea how to prescribe it. You really do want to work with someone hormone literate on this. So this is a serious public health gap. But here's why testosterone matters so specifically in the GLP-1 context. Because if you're losing muscle on a GLP-1 and you want to protect and rebuild that muscle, testosterone, protein, and strength training are your most powerful allies. Testosterone directly counteracts the muscle wasting effects of the caloric deficit these drugs create. And it's interesting, of course, these studies were done in men, but studies in men on GLP-1s who also received testosterone showed dramatically better preservation of lean mass and much better body composition outcomes. So obviously we need to get these studies done on women. It's ridiculous. So the same applies to women. The physiology and the physiological effects are the same, even though we don't have the studies yet to prove it. But they're coming. Hey, gorgeous. If you're feeling like a complete stranger in your own body right now, listen up. The cravings, the energy crashes, the sleep that's gone sideways, the weight that won't budge no matter what you try. That's not just aging. That's not just your new normal, and it absolutely is not inevitable. It means your nutrition isn't matched to your hormones, and that is a fixable problem. I built my Macro Reset program for you. It is a self-paced program that teaches you exactly how to eat for this chapter, personalized to your body, your metabolism, and your life. No restriction, no starvation, and no one-size-fits-all nonsense. Grab it at estherblum.com/macros. The link is in the show notes. You're so welcome. Back to the show. I'm going to revisit what I said earlier, research on menopausal women using GLP-1 medications shows that those who are concurrently on HRT alongside GLP-1s achieve up to a 15% greater weight loss than women on GLPs alone. So this is not a trend or a rounding error. 15% improvement, and their insulin sensitivity outcomes are significantly better. So think about what that means practically. If a woman loses 20 pounds on a GLP alone, her counterpart on the same drug with optimized HRT might lose 23 pounds. And she's doing it with better metabolic markers, better muscle preservation, and a body that is actually functioning more efficiently, not just shrinking. This is a meaningful clinical difference, and it should be really reshaping how every provider is counseling women who walk in asking about these medications. It's not just, here's your prescription, good luck. It should be, let's look at your hormones first because they will determine how well this works. So why does HRT amplify GLP-1 results so significantly? It really comes down to the way these two interventions are operating on and overlapping and complementary systems. So estrogen directly improves insulin sensitivity, meaning your cells become more responsive to insulin. They're more efficient at clearing glucose from the bloodstream, and they're less prone to storing excess energy as visceral fat. So you keep your waistline, right? You don't develop the menopause or the love handles. When you're using a GLP-1, and it's simultaneously slowing down gastric emptying and reducing glucagon and sending fullness signals to the brain, you have these two independent pathways working in sync to create a much more favorable metabolic environment than either creates alone. And I want to add my 2 cents to this, which is that you don't even have to do the full dose of GLP-1. So many of my clients stay on the microdose, on the lowest dose possible, and never even need to increase it. Some of my clients do, but a lot can stay on just the low dose, which also means less GI side effects, less risk for any of the side effects associated with a GLP-1. So that's super cool, and it makes it more cost effective if you can spread out your dosing. But then there's also this fascinating interaction at the level of the hypothalamus. This is the brain region that regulates appetite, metabolism, and energy balance. And estrogen receptors and GLP-1 receptors are both expressed in the hypothalamus, and the research shows when estrogen is present at healthy physiological levels, whether you're making it on your own or you're using HRT, your GLP-1 receptor signaling may be more robust. So this could be one reason why postmenopausal women on HRT respond so much more effectively to GLP-1 therapy because their hormone environment is literally making the drug work better. And this is consistent with what we see in the broader HRT literature. The ELITE trial, the KEEPS trial, the Danish osteoporosis prevention study, long-term studies consistently show that women who initiate HRT in early menopause or even late perimenopause have better metabolic profiles because you're not gaining that weight and you're preserving your muscle. They have lower cardiovascular risk, reduced visceral fat accumulation, and healthier body composition. So estrogen is doing metabolic heavy lifting that sets the stage for every other intervention to work better. And then there's body composition. So studies looking at postmenopausal women on GLP-1s with concurrent HRT show better fat to muscle ratios in weight loss, meaning more of what they're losing is fat and more of what they're keeping is lean mass. And this is huge because weight loss that preserves muscle is metabolically sustainable. It keeps us insulin sensitive. We can eat more carbs. We can metabolize them. Weight loss that is cannibalizing muscle and high chronic cortisol can eat up our own muscle tissue as well. This leads to a lower resting metabolic rate. The minute we lose muscle, our metabolism is slower. And then we have a higher rebound risk of regaining that weight and long-term frailty. And HRT actively protects the quality of the weight loss, not just the quantity. I'm going to say that again. HRT protects the quality of the weight loss, not just the quantity. That's why the scale is not your best metric. You want to use like an in-body scan or have somebody who knows how to measure your body fat with calipers. You want to make sure that you are optimizing your muscle and not just losing pounds, because muscle weighs more than fat. So people say, oh, I lost all this weight. Well, if you've lost muscle, you've trashed your metabolism. We don't want to do that. And look, I'll be transparent. I am following the research alongside you. This is still a relatively young body of research. We don't have a 10-year randomized control study specifically studying GLP-1s and HRT in combination in menopausal women. The field is moving fast and there is so much more to learn. But what we have so far, the data we have so far, and in the emerging combination of studies is consistently pointing in one direction, which is that these two work better together than either works alone. And I do believe every woman on a GLP-1 should be having a concurrent conversation about her hormones, full stop. Not because GLP-1s are dangerous without HRT, but because you're leaving 15% on the table. And in my world, we do not leave results on the table. All right, but let me get off the research and just be totally real with you for a second, because I've been doing this for almost 3 decades and clinical experience and what I see in practice matters. That's its own study subset. So here's what I see with my own clients who come to me on GLP-1s without the hormone support is, yes, as I mentioned, my previous client, she lost all this weight, but she was exhausted. She had no drive. She had no libido. I also see thinning hair, and that's often a combination of the caloric restriction, a sluggish thyroid, nutrient depletion that comes with, such a low calorie diet and also low testosterone. I pause here for effect because really, I need you to metabolize that for a minute. Is under eating and low testosterone will cause you to lose your hair. I see this again and again in practice. I would say at least 50% of my clients come to me concerned with the state of their hair loss. So this is a big deal. They also, though, struggle to build strength in the gym even when they're trying. Like, even when we are set up with hormones and GLP-1s, it still takes menopausal women longer to build muscle. It's a longer game. It's a slower process. I tell my clients, if you want one of those body transformations like you see the influencers having, you need to give yourself a minimum of 2 to 3 years. It takes time. So we need to be patient with our bodies and ourselves and just be really, really consistent and just wait for it and just fall in love with the process rather than rushing it, because our muscles are going to be on their own timeline. We can give our bodies all the support it needs, but we have to just also be patient and remember our bodies have been through a hormone and endocrine storm, and now we are in the rebuild phase, and it's never too late. I remember when I was first starting out in my dietetics career, reading a research article showing that people in their 90s were able to build lean muscle mass. So it is never too late. It is never a wrong time. That time is now. So let's get practical and talk about really what you need to demand from your doctor. So if you're on a GLP-1 or if you're considering one, here's what I want you to do and say. Number 1, get your hormones tested properly, not just an FSH and an estradiol on day 3 of your cycle. I want comprehensive sex hormones. Estradiol, progesterone, total and free testosterone, DHEA sulfate, sex hormone binding globulin. I also want fasting insulin, hemoglobin A1C, a full thyroid panel. That includes a TSH, free T3, free T4, and reverse T3, and inflammatory markers, including CRP and homocysteine. This is all in the show notes and also in Chapter 2 of See You Later, Ovulator, if you've missed this. And if you can get a DEXA scan for body composition, not just BMI, actual lean mass versus fat mass, or get on an in-body scale, please do it before you start a GLP-1. Use it as your baseline. If your doctor tells you these tests aren't necessary, find a new provider. I'm not even kidding you, okay? Just don't waste your time. Or you can be like me and say, I don't care. I'll pay for this out of pocket. I'll sign a waiver saying this is not insurance fraud. Just give me the tests. All right. But either way, get them done to start and you do want to work with a provider who can actually interpret these tests for you and really know whether you are hormone deficient or imbalanced. You want to make sure that you're optimizing hormones before or simultaneously while you're on the GLP-1, but not after. Like if you know that you're in perimenopause or you suspect, or you definitely know you're in menopause, make sure your hormones are optimized before you start the GLP-1. Don't wait until you're 6 months in and depleted to address your hormones. Address them now. Next, protein is your job now. You're going to be like one of those influencers making fun of herself for getting all her protein in and putting cottage cheese on pretty much everything and brushing her teeth with it. But trust me when I tell you, one of the most single important things you can do to protect muscle on a GLP-1 is to optimize your protein. And this is incredibly challenging when the medication is suppressing your appetite or some people experience nausea initially. I typically recommend a minimum of 1 gram of protein per pound of your goal body weight. So if you want to weigh 130 pounds, you need to eat 130 grams of protein. On a GLP-1, hitting that number requires strategy and sometimes sheer will. Sometimes it means getting the protein in even if you're not feeling hungry or feeling like you have an appetite. So you want to make sure that you're really getting high quality protein sources at every meal. So things like eggs, cottage cheese, pastured meats, wild fish, quality protein powders if you need. Some of my clients need to eat protein as their first priority and then add other foods around it because they genuinely cannot eat as much volume. But build up to it. Also, if you have very low stomach acid and you find you're not tolerating red meat as well, or you have an aversion, stick to the lighter, leaner proteins till your digestion is up to speed, and getting on hormones can support digestion too. The next non-negotiable for you is lifting weights. I don't care if you've never set foot in a weight room. I don't care if you think you're too old or too out of shape or too intimidated. Resistance training is the most powerful tool you have to preserve and to build muscle mass. And 2 to 3 sessions per week of progressive resistance training needs to be done consistently. Now, here's a really simple pro tip. If you're like, Esther, there's no way I'm going to do this. I don't want to hire a trainer. I don't want this to be a thing. You can go on ChatGPT or Claude and type in, hey, I'm a midlife woman. I'm in perimenopause or menopause. I don't even know where to start lifting weights. Give me instructions. Send me YouTube videos. Tell me exactly what routines I need to do. You can start off, for some women, 2 to 5 pounds is enough to start. For some women, body weight is enough to start. For some women, they start with resistance bands. For some women, they'll start with 1 kettlebell and then build up. I also had my dear friend Jennifer Kirsch on this podcast earlier on. Go back and listen to her, but a minimum of 2 times per week is needed. And if you're only doing 2 times per week, you've got to do it consistently and do whole body exercises. But you can use AI to help you program your strength training workout. And that makes it super duper easy. And you can do it at home. You don't have to join a gym. You can literally do it at home with a few dumbbells that you buy on Facebook Marketplace. But if you're on a GLP-1 without lifting weights, you're actively working against yourself, because you're going to be in a caloric deficit created by the medication. And that is an anabolic nightmare without resistant stimulus. So you'll lose weight and you may lose fat, but you're going to lose muscle. The goal is to gain muscle. We're not overly fat. We are truly under muscle. So when people say, well, I want to lose weight first and then I'll start building muscle, start building muscle first and then you will lose weight. This is not a scare tactic. This is just physiology. All right. One more important point. Don't let anyone take you off HRT to put you on a GLP-1. I want to put this in big flashing letters. There are providers out there who are positioning GLP-1s as a replacement for HRT. And they'll say, oh, you don't need estrogen. Just lose the weight with Ozempic and your symptoms will improve. I have heard this. It happens. Do not accept this. They are not the same thing. They do not address the same root causes. HRT is addressing the actual hormone deficiency that is making your body more prone to the metabolic dysfunction the GLP is treating. So you can absolutely use both. I would argue, in fact, for most menopausal women, using both is the most complete approach available. Last but not least, here's a quick and really important note on side effects and monitoring, because I want you going into any protocol with your eyes open. The side effects of GLP-1s can be real. Nausea is the most common, especially in the first few weeks of titration. So always start at the absolute lowest dose. And this is a nutrition management issue that we can address with fiber and magnesium and hydration. Constipation is also very common, and this is a nutrition management issue that we can address with fiber and magnesium and hydration and movement. And also, some people experience fatigue during dose escalation. Hair loss has been reported, and it's often attributed to the caloric restriction rather than the drug. It's definitely worth monitoring and addressing aggressively with protein and biotin and iron and zinc. There are also rarer but more serious concerns. Again, if you're doing the microdose, it's pretty unheard of, but pancreatitis risk, gallbladder issues, because rapid weight loss is going to always increase gallstone risk. And in people with a personal family history of medullary thyroid cancer, GLP-1s are absolutely contraindicated. But from a monitoring standpoint, I want regular check-ins on your body composition, not just your weight. You should get labs, including kidney function, your liver enzymes, and a full metabolic panel. You should have muscle function assessments and a bone density test. You should have a bone density test at baseline. I forgot to mention that earlier. These are not optional. This is what responsible care looks like. And please do not adjust your own GLP dose based on TikTok. I am begging you. All right, gorgeous. Let's land this plane. So here's my takeaway for today in just plain and simple language. GLP-1s are genuinely powerful tools for menopausal women. And when you combine them with optimized HRT, the results are up to 15% better when it comes to weight loss, insulin sensitivity, and body composition. This is not theoretical. This is based on solid research done. But here's the part I need you to remember. The GLP is not doing this alone. It's doing this inside a complete protocol where you have optimized hormones, you have optimized protein, resistance training. These are non-negotiables. That's the full picture. So GLP-1 is a very powerful accelerant, and HRT is the hormone foundation that makes your body receptive to everything you're doing. And food and training are what determine whether you come out of this stronger or depleted. And the women I see thriving are not the ones who just got a prescription. They are ones who got the full protocol. So if you want to go deeper on the hormone side of this, my book, See You Later, Ovulator, is your Bible. It covers HRT, testosterone, nutrition for menopause, and everything in between. And it is in language that is readable and occasionally makes you snort laugh, which I consider a personal victory. And if you want personalized support, if you're sitting here thinking, I need someone to look at my labs, my hormones, my protocol, My Make Menopause Your Bitch program is a 4-month one-on-one intensive where we do exactly that. We leave nothing on the table, and you can find all the details at estherblum.com. The links to everything I've mentioned today are in the show notes. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I love talking about this stuff. And as I'm sure you can tell, I love that you are out here educating yourself and refusing to just accept the standard, it's just menopause, deal with it narrative. So you deserve better. I'm here to help you get it. And until next time, stay gorgeous, stay informed, and go make menopause your bitch. If you loved this episode, follow or subscribe to the Midlife Realignment wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, and leave a review to help other women find this show.